Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage.
He mentioned me 16 times today in a speech. I'm living rent-free inside his head.
Nigel Farage has reacted to the Prime Minister's warnings that reform's economic policies are fantasy and is trust-like while speaking in Las Vegas at a Bitcoin conference.
We have Keir Starmer, our socialist Prime Minister, is terrified. Do you know, he mentioned me 16 times today in a speech. I'm living rent-free inside his head.
Well, that's after Keir Starmer's scathing speech where he mentioned Nigel's name 16 times. Here's a taster of what he said.
Now in government, we're once again fighting the same fantasy. This time from Farage. The same bet in the same casino that you can spend tens of billions of pounds on tax cuts without a proper way of paying for it. Using your family finances, your mortgages, your bills as the gambling chip on his mad experiment.
Well, we're joined now by GB News' political editor, Christopher Hope. And Christopher, again, one of your questions has cut through, hasn't it? You asked yesterday, does he live rent-free in your brain?
Yes. We've got a clip of that question now. Should we play it quickly?
Yeah.
See what it says.
Chris Hope. Chris
Hope, GB News. Prime Minister Farage, Nigel Farage, has 5 MPs. You've got 403. Are you panicking because reform is so far ahead in the polls, it seems? Is he living rent-free in your brain? You went to a state school. Your dad worked in a factory. Your mum worked in the NHS. So why has a public school-educated former city trader got more in common with the Red Wall than you have?
Well, I've set out my divide. I think the single most important thing is to make sure we stabilise our economy and build on that strong foundation the future of our country. And that is what we're doing. And we're seeing the early signs of that. Growth is up, the highest in the G7 this year. Interest rates have come down 4 times. So we're beginning to show what happens when you stabilise the economy. And I want to protect working people from Nigel Farage because I want to protect them from what he will do, which is exactly the same as Liz Truss, which will have a direct impact on their lives. And in relation to the second part of your question, I don't need lectures from Nigel Farage on what it means to be working people. I know what it means to work 10 hours a day in a factory 5 days a week. And I know that because that is what my dad did every single working day of his life. And that's what I grew up with. So I don't need lessons from Nigel Farage about the issues that matter most to working people in this country. Thank you, Chris.
Farage answering a question from us yesterday in Wigan. 16 times you mentioned Nigel Farage's name. Now, I've watched...
Well, about 6 times in the answer to your question.
Well, right. I mean, you know, it empowers him. David Cameron, as Tory leader, had 6 years as PM dealing with the problem that is Nigel Farage. And never said his name in public, or very rarely did. He didn't want to empower him. It's a bit like Voldemort in the Harry Potter films. You know.
He who must not be named.
Yes, you don't name him. But 16 times, so it almost lifts Nigel Farage into an equal of the PM. The PM's got 403 MPs. Reform have 5.
It's a general election campaign.
It felt like it.
Isn't it?
It did feel like it. And
so what's he playing at?
I think he's got... I mean, the question seems more apt. I think Nigel Farage reform has got into the head of the Labour Party. If we look at the polling, there's a concern for them. Reform were on 32 points most recently. Labour 21 points, 11 points ahead. Tories 14 points, down 3. Somehow, this guy, Nigel Farage, is setting the agenda. Even though he's in Las Vegas mocking the Prime Minister, he's doing things which in politics you wouldn't do, but he just does it differently. He has authenticity. He cuts through. A posh boy went to private school against a state school boy, but somehow he resonates more than Keir Starmer in the Red Wall.
But it's about listening to what the people are saying, isn't it? I mean, that which comes through again with all this business with the ECHR and the Attorney General today,
yes.
Sort of comparing it to 1930s Germany and the rise of the Nazis and all the rest of it. I mean, it's you've got to connect with what the people are saying, even if there are some fantasy economics involved.
Yes. I think, yeah, that's right. I mean, he wants to save Nigel Farage 45 billion on net zero, 4 billion on asylum hotels, 50 billion on lifting the rate at which you pay income tax. That's why the main parties are saying it's fantasy trust economics, or it's trust 2.0. What they mean is gambling with all of our pensions and savings.
Yeah.
OK. Chris, do stay with us because we're joined now by Minister of State for School Standards, Katherine McKinnon, and then we'll be back with you for some reaction. Ms McKinnon, good to see you this morning. Thank you for joining us here on Breakfast. We're just talking about that extraordinary press conference yesterday, which the Prime Minister very hastily planned and put together at 9:30 the night before, so that he could stand and talk and react to Nigel Farage. Is the government panicking?
I think it's really important that we take on some of the arguments that are being made and some of the promises being made in terms of public spending. We've clearly got a spending review coming up. It's really important that we take a fiscally responsible approach to the public finances. We've always committed to that and we've delivered on that in government. And I think it's really important to point out where there are fantasy economics going on and promises being made that just do not add up, do not stack up, and actually would be very dangerous for the country. We've already had the experience of higher mortgages and the disastrous impact of the Liz Truss budget that we're all still paying the price for. And I think it's really important to call it out where we see it.
Say you need to argue against promises being made. If you were 6 months out from a general election, if you were even perhaps 12 months out from a general election, that's understandable. We're 4 years away, most likely, from a general election. You can afford to simply ignore what Nigel Farage is saying and just get on with the job of governing. You don't need to respond.
You know, since we came into government, we've worked really hard to level with the public, to be really clear and honest about the challenges that we face as a country. I mean, today we're announcing investment in schools and hospitals. I mean, we're literally talking about fixing leaking roofs and making sure that the electrics don't go out when it rains in hospitals. I mean, we've inherited a really catastrophic underinvestment in our public services. And we know that people are feeling that. They're experiencing it in their lives. We want to deliver better education outcomes for children. We want to get better health outcomes for people, but it does all cost money, and we have to be really careful about how we budget for that, invest in it, and invest for the future. And I think it's really good to have that leveling with the public about what these costs are, what the investments are, what the choices are, and the trade-offs. And I think to have a debate within the reality of our fiscal context is really, really important. And I think this is about calling out fantasy economics where we see it, because we really do have to have an honest conversation about how we invest and grow our economy so that everybody benefits from that.
OK, can I ask about this £1.2 billion worth of funding then? And this is for essential maintenance in hospitals and schools. Where's the money coming from and how long is it going to take to implement?
So this money was allocated in the autumn budget, and this is now the allocations of that funding. So people should hopefully start to see quite quickly, because it has to be spent this year, schools being repaired, hospitals being repaired. Now, totally appreciate this is a relatively small investment where we need substantial rebuilding of our public estate in terms of hospitals and schools. And we know that there's still rack to repair. I mean, the image of children learning under steel props, I think, will remain with us of the last government, the overriding memory in terms of our school system. We want to make sure that never happens again. It does mean investing for the long term. So in the shorter term, we can support schools with some of these most immediate repairs, getting a boiler in place and fixing the roofs. And then some of that will be enough to support these schools. Others will need a full rebuild, and this will help them in the meantime to get to that full rebuild point.
Just before we let you go, Minister, you will acknowledge, won't you, that there are a lot of people in this country who are concerned about levels of immigration and how we can get people, particularly those who are coming here illegally, how we can get them back to where they should be, their home country or some other place. Is it right, then, for the Attorney General to say people who talk about coming out of the ECHR in order to facilitate that, is it right for him to compare that to Nazi Germany?
So I think that's quite a jump from what the Attorney General was saying yesterday. I think he's proposing that, you know, we do have a really sensible and measured conversation about our place in the world, that, you know, as a government, we really stand by our position within an international community that is rules-based, and we support that. But actually, it does need looked at. We do need to have that conversation about how that rules-based system applies in the modern context in Britain. And as you say, meets those concerns that people have, understandably, after years of underinvestment in our public services, that we make sure that we do support families, we do support children, we deliver on our plan for change.
Yes, but
and that's why we are focused on that.
But to make comparisons to 1930s Germany and the rise of Nazism, which is what he did in that speech to Russi, he can't stay in the job, can he?
So I think it's really important that we move away from some of the language that is being referenced and actually look at the substance of what is being said here. That we live in an international system. Without it, we operate the way that Putin and Russia are operating. That is not where the UK is, and we know that. We know the British public, that's not where they are. They want us to be a strong and secure country that works with our allies, works within a rules-based system, but we make sure that those rules fit within the context of the modern world. And I think right across with our partners and neighbours on an international level, this conversation is happening, and it needs to happen, and it's right that it happens. And I think the Attorney General is just looking to start that conversation and make sure that we live within a system, but that it does deliver for people as well.
OK, Katherine McKinnon, thank you very much indeed. Chris Hope, I'm being yelled at because we're out of time. You've got 30 seconds here. She defended that.
Yes.
But also we'd end up like Putin.
I think going anywhere near Nazis and the war is always a problem in politics. That is a clumsy attempt by Lord Herman to say something. He has been under fire for a while now about him in government, and him to emerge with this, frankly, a politically clumsy attempt to criticise Reform and Tories is difficult.
Oh, yeah. Chris, thank you.
Thank you very much.